Is this crazy?
2024 was an historic year for elections.
I get it.
From small islands to the world's largest democracy.
It's great. There is no words to describe this moment.
A record-breaking number of people voted with consequences not just for their own countries, but also for the world.
It's a mafia court of Romania.
So, how has this extraordinary year of elections played out? The first vote of the year was in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina won for the fourth time in a row after a controversial election. But her new term was short-lived. In July, student-led protests broke out over job quotas. The unrest spiraled into deadly clashes between students and security forces, killing about 1,500 people. That's according to the country's interim leader. The Prime Minister faced pressure to resign and protesters stormed her official residence. Sheikh Hasina fled to India, triggering an intense power struggle in Bangladesh.
Is that this is not just the end of the tyrant Sheikh Hasina. With this, we put an end to the mafia state that she has created.
The outcome of the French parliamentary elections were pretty unexpected.
Nous sommes prêts à redresser le pays, prêts à faire revivre la France.
Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party was set to emerge victorious after Emmanuel Macron called a snap election. But against all predictions, it didn't go quite as well as they hoped.
Marine Le Pen is putting on a brave face, but she must be crestfallen. She spent decades building up her party with the ambition of taking power in Parliament.
It was the left-wing New Popular Front coalition that won the most seats. An election that was supposed to deliver clarity did the exact opposite. And a few months later, this happened.
331.
Prime Minister Michel Barnier was ousted after a no-confidence vote, the first time a French government has been toppled in this way in more than 60 years. Claudia Sheinbaum was voted in as Mexico's first female president in June. This wasn't entirely surprising, but it was the size of her victory that was unexpected. She won the highest vote percentage in the country's democratic history.
Mexico! Viva Mexico!
In Iran, the ballot is tightly controlled by an assembly of clerics and jurists, and it's all under the watchful eye of the supreme leader. The country was forced to hold a presidential election in 2024 after Ibrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash. Raisi was going to be the president to oversee the transition to a new supreme leader in the event of Ali Khamenei's death. He was even tipped to take over himself. So his death threw question marks over Iran's future. The winner was the relatively moderate Masoud Pezeshkian, labeled the first reformist Iranian president in 20 years. He vowed to ease headscarf laws in the country and to reach out to the West.
اولین بار از این جایگاه ریاست جمهوری اسلامی ایران با شما سخن میگویم. مردم ما در انتخاب من به شعار محوری وفاق ملی رأی دادند.
In an unprecedented move, Romania's top court annulled the results of the first round of its presidential election. Declassified intelligence documents allege Russia was behind a campaign to promote a far-right candidate on platforms such as TikTok and Telegram. Kalin Georgescu was seen as an outsider, but emerged as the front-runner after the first round of voting. Less than a day after the cancellation, he spoke exclusively to Sky News.
Do you have any links to Russia?
Doesn't exist any relationship with any foreign part or particularly with Russia, as they said. Doesn't exist from my side. My only relationship with the Romanian people. The Constitutional Court, first of all, I want to be very clear from now, is a mafia court of Romania.
April was the start of the world's biggest election. India's voting went on for 6 weeks, split into 7 different phases. A record-breaking 642 million people cast their ballots. That's according to India's Election Commission.
The challenges here are talking about high inflation, high unemployment, and the cost of living crisis for ordinary people. And they are getting people's attention.
Modi!
The popular but controversial Prime Minister Narendra Modi won a 3rd term in office. His party fell short of a majority, though, so he's been forced to rely on a coalition of parties to form a government.
I've been waiting for this day for quite a while. It seemed impossible. It's great.
The Labour Party has won this general election.
July saw the UK firmly turn its back on the Conservative Party after 14 years in power.
Yes, he has won decisively, but now his challenge is to prove to the public that trust in politics really can be restored.
Quite a few big names lost their seats, including this former Prime Minister.
There's no doubt that the ANC has pulled out all the stops for this rally. Dancers from tribal groups across the country, liberation slogans everywhere.
It was the end of an era in South Africa too. The African National Congress Party, the ANC, lost its majority for the first time. 30 did in with Nelson Mandela as its leader. Support for the party slumped.
Voting means so much to people here. 30 years ago, the ballot brought them freedom, and today they're hoping it will bring much needed change.
And Botswana had its own political shake-up.
I hope the future will be bright this time around, after these elections.
The Botswana Democratic Party, which had been in power since 1966, was rejected by voters in a landslide defeat.
When I look into your faces, and you look back at me and you say, that's my boy.
Not all elections are free and fair. For example, Russia, Belarus, Venezuela, Iran, Syria, Jordan and Rwanda all held votes in 2024, but they all score poorly in the freedoms they give their citizens. That's according to these rankings from the think tank Freedom House. Vladimir Putin predictably won the Russian election in March, in which opposition was suppressed. Bashar al-Assad's party also claimed victory just months before rebel forces toppled his regime.
It's a big party celebration here. We've seen it before and it'll go on a long time.
Allahu Akbar!
And President Paul Kagame in Rwanda also won a 4th term. Things were more chaotic in Venezuela, where President Maduro claimed a 3rd term in office, despite several exit polls saying he'd lost. Thousands took to the streets to protest, and a former opposition candidate fled to Spain to seek asylum. Most Western governments are yet to recognise the result. At the start of 2024, the world was certain the US election would be a Biden-Trump rerun. But then this happened.
So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
And the race was turned on its head.
This is okay. I'm waving it.
2 assassination attempts on Donald Trump, as well as moments like this.
I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
Knees weak, arms are heavy, vomit on my sweater already, mom's spaghetti.
Meant this election dominated world news.
Thank you very much. Wow.
But what was expected to be a tight race ended in a decisive win for Donald Trump. He's now only the 2nd president ever to win non-consecutive terms in office.
It is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Now I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it.
Not all votes attracted quite so much attention, such as the presidential election in the self-declared Republic of Somaliland. It's never been recognized as a country by the rest of the world, and its politicians want that to change. The Solomon Islands also held a pivotal election. Its new Prime Minister has promised to continue its pro-China policy, drawing the nation closer to Beijing. Jordan's election happened as conflict escalated in the Middle East. The Islamic Action Front, the political arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, tripled its representation in parliament. Anger at Israel over the war in Gaza, as well as new electoral laws, would have helped boost their support. And North Macedonia, with its population of just under 2 million people, made history by electing its first woman as president. Soaring tensions between China and Taiwan dominated politics in the run-up to the island's election.
As always, elections here are about so much more than just domestic policy. It's about who people think they are and how they feel about their powerful neighbour.
China sees the self-governing island of Taiwan as a breakaway province that should be reunified with the mainland. It described the elections as a choice between war and peace. But the Democratic Progressive Party made history by winning a third term, and they've done so while campaigning on a platform of standing up to its superpower neighbour. The world's eyes were also on Georgia, where its election was expected to determine if the country wanted more integration with the West or with Russia. Both Georgia and Moldova's elections were dominated by claims of Russian interference. The Georgian Dream Party claimed victory, and mass protests broke out with accusations that the vote was rigged.
These protesters don't just think that their election was rigged. They think the whole democratic basis of this country is being eroded.
Violence erupted again after the ruling party decided to freeze talks to join the EU until 2028. South Sudan is the youngest nation in the world. It's been mired in conflict for much of its existence, and it's never had an election. There was meant to be one in 2024, but that's been delayed. The government says it's not ready for them, saying there are security concerns and logistical challenges. A civil war, which began in 2013, led to more than 400,000 excess deaths. And despite a peace agreement, the country remains divided. Many within South Sudan think holding an election would help the country address some of its problems.
Come here.
1 in 3 voters lives in countries where the quality of elections is worse than it was 5 years ago. That's according to the global.
Come here.
1 in 3 voters lives in countries where the quality of elections is worse than it was 5 years ago. That's according to the Global State of Democracy Report 2024.
We see turnout also dropping around the world, while protests and riots around elections increase. Elections are now regularly disputed in one way or the other. Democracy more broadly is declining around the world.
So, is there any cause for hope?
So I actually think one of the things that gives us the most hope is that people do protest. Of course, that can be a sign that something is wrong if people feel like they have to go to the streets to make their voices heard. On the other hand, it means that people are not willing to